Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
So good, so good, so good.
Easter deals starting at just $25 or at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means tons of fresh reasons to rack.
They've got the best gifts.
Because I always find something amazing.
Save on Easter finds from Kate Spade New York, Calvin Klein, MAC Cosmetics, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbiff Rugby Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby and top 14, ProD2 and Nationale, Champions Cups, Challenge Cups, the town, cities, bars, restaurants, food, people, fans, stadia, everything that makes French rugby so magnificent. I'm joined, as ever, by Rob, who's back from his holidays. Rob, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It was a nice weekend. It was too short, though. I could happily still be there.
Talk us through it. Barcelona, I've never been.
I loved it. Like 3 days is not enough. Certainly not enough to do the eating and drinking that you feel you need to do it justice. Because there was just so many places that I would have loved to have eaten out. Drinking was the wine everywhere was amazing. Good beer places. Yeah, just like so many options. And that's without even talking about the beach. Like we could have been in a city in the middle of the country for all we knew, apart from the odd seagull. Like we didn't venture down to the beach or the marina at all. We all kind of thought about it, but there's just so much, and it's actually quite a big city. Well, to walk across it, there's so many different areas, and they're all kind of quite a long way from each other, like the few of the interesting bits. So, yeah.
So if the top 14 final is ever back at the new camp, you'll be going for it.
Book the flight now, yeah.
Book it now. It
sounds happily be back there again next weekend.
Sounds like a Rob Graham pig in shit weekend, just rolling amidst the craft beer and meat, cheese and wine. Fantastic.
Yeah. Did feel at all times incredibly dehydrated because there's just a lot of salt in everything, like meat, cheese, olives. But yeah, the food was great. And a lot of good pastries as well. Good coffee as well. So again, excellent. Another dehydrator.
Excellent. We have to talk though about, you've been doing some shopping, Rob. You've been doing some...
Did do quite a bit of shopping. Some very good vintage stores in Barcelona as well. And I'd actually walked past someone wearing a shirt similar to the one I'm currently wearing the day before. And I was like, oh, they kind of planted the seed. Like, oh, imagine if there's one of them in one of the vintage shops. And I walked into one. There was loads. And I was kind of like, let's see if there's anything in this one. It looks like it's kind of got a few interesting sporty bits. And I just saw a sleeve and I was like, surely that is not it. I almost ran towards it. And yes, I picked up a Stade Toulousain shirt from back in the day, which happens to be the 95-96 season when they lifted the first ever Heineken Cup. So that is a proper, for anyone that hasn't seen us on making a song and dance about it on our social media, it's a bucket list item that to have any kind of pre-2000, I think, Toulouse shirt is something for the bucket list, but to have this one, yeah, it's
an excellent shirt. I must say, I'm a little bit jealous. It's the the design is class. We've got thick collar, we've got wide fit. I would suggest
we've got sleeves lengthwise are fine, but there is just so much sleeve in there.
If you ever need to sort of parasail off a building and have a soft landing, you'll be fine. We've got Dennis the Menace, red and black stripes. And crucially, I think the old Nike logo with the wording emblazoned is just a key item. Yeah, very well done.
A very, very old school Stade Toulousain logo,
Yeah.
which actually hasn't changed that much. It's just looks older.
Sans border.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks very good. You actually managed to get to the socials before I could. My angle was going to be, even on a romantic weekend away, not in France, Rob has managed to shoehorn in a purchase of some French rugby memorabilia. Like, but you got there before with something a little bit more constructive.
In fairness to my girlfriend, I think she could tell how happy I was to have found this item, and she was just happy for me, which tells you that she's a much better person than I am.
Very good.
What about you? How was your weekend?
It was nice, yeah.
You were booking flights to Barcelona because you were looking on enviously at the vintage fleeces that were also
there was some great
on sale.
There were some great ones. No, it was good. It was fairly quiet. In the middle of it, Saturday night, I went to a gig.
Very nice.
Which was very good. Went to see Jack White, formerly of the White Stripes, at Troxy, which was, it must be said, pretty spectacular. It was a hell of an evening. Preceded it with a very nice Lebanese meal in Shoreditch, which is quite wanky, and had some sherry. So we shoehorned in a bit of kind of continental flavour into there, but yeah, not quite as much. But thoroughly agreeable weekend. I was trying to shoehorn it in there, but I can't do it properly. We had something that kept us both interested and excited, I dare say, for future French trips. We had a fantastic email in from one of the listeners, Kerry Richards. So shout out, Kerry. Thank you for getting in touch. Rob, the contents, talk us through it, because it was pretty exceptional reading.
Well, I tried to explain it to my girlfriend, having read it on the flight. So Kerry's not on any social media, which he, by his own admission, is quite a rare thing these days. So he kind of didn't know how to contact us. And we kind of said the email address last week, kind of just on a whim, which is rosbeefrugby@gmail.com for anyone else who wants to email us. And we got our first ever listener email, because that's the first time we've ever said the email address on this podcast. And I think kindred spirit kind of doesn't quite capture it. It's basically Kerry and his friend Reese were basically Rosbeefs, but 20 years early, and rather than doing a podcast, they did a kind of blog, which was very early noughties thing to do. But some of the like double header weekends, going to the more niche venues, loving ProD2 games more than top 14, travel, food, wine, just basically what we're about. But they got there first, I guess.
Yeah. So this will actually be the last podcast. Kerry and Reese are taking over as the front runners and the aforementioned pioneers of the double header weekend, the French rugby media with a UK angle. But yeah, thanks for getting in touch, and please do, because we've had some interesting stuff via email. Maybe we should set up a PO box. Maybe that we're missing a trick. We might get some handwritten stuff from somewhere.
People that have worked out how to download a podcast but haven't cracked email.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much cracking; it's more of a stubbornness to do things properly. I think we need to set up a PO box. Let's do it. But in the spirit as well of ProD2 being, I think it was the favourite league out of the three. I think Kerry mentioned we're having a little bit of a ProD2 special, not just because we weren't able to watch as much rugby as we normally would over the weekend, but we have a very special guest coming up in just a moment. But before that, there was some pretty, if not seismic, some very interesting results in the round just gone. None more so than, and as foretold by Robert, Biarritz have finally broken their duck away at Oyonnax.
Yeah, so that was 7 defeats in a row, was it? And yeah, I called it. That was about the only one I got right, wasn't it? I had a shocking weekend.
But yeah, great for them. Oyonnax, who were 26-3 up at half time, I think, or 20 something single figures, and were soundly thumped in the second half.
It's all Joe Alab, mate. It's the international periods. They haven't won a game during the international windows. I think that's absolutely extraordinary.
Do you reckon he was there for the first half and then nipped out?
Yeah. So, sorry, lads. I've got to get the flight because I've got to be at Pennyhill Park at 3:00 tomorrow. Probably. I don't know. It's weird. I'd love to know inside the camp and see what it's like. And speak to some of the players and understand the psyche behind what's going on. Maybe it's completely unrelated. Like it could just be correlation and not causation. But it's hard to believe that when you've got a head coach that has clearly had a big impact when he's not there or he's got his eye on somewhere else, that's not having an impact on the squad. But
yeah,
it also wasn't a particularly strong Biarritz team. Like there was a lot of names there I didn't quite recognise in positions that you normally see people you recognise. So yeah, kind of doubly good, I guess. It's just it's just the sort of logic defying result you get in ProD2. There was going to be, I went for as many logic defying results as possible last week in my predictions, and I think I was the only one that came off.
Yeah, elsewhere you did think Nice might have a crack at favoured unpredictable side Mont-de-Marsan, but they held out to win 26-22.
Post but no cigar yet again for Nice.
Yeah, frustrating. Colomiers got a really good late win at home to Brive 2019. There were some real tight ones this week, weren't there? Dax, the squad is looking a little bit thin in a bit of a rough patch, lost 17-19 at home to Nevers. And there was some drama. There was some drama in Agen. In what before the game was 14th v 15th, I believe. Agen came out on top 26-23. And Valence's head coach, Fabien Fortessin, was not particularly amused, judging by his post-match comments, which, if you'll indulge me, roughly translate as the following. If I'm being objective, VRDR, as in Valence, missed 100 years of history, French championship titles, great infrastructure to welcome referees properly. If there'd been a bit of consistency in refereeing, the end of the match would have been different. He then went on to say, among other things, a smothered maul that gives a scrum for Argent. There are decisions in money time that are incomprehensible to me. All I understand is that we are missing 100 years of history and past. We don't have all the Abdelif Benazi and Philippe Seller who speak up in the press for us and put pressure on the referee. Argent should not be worried. They will save themselves. They will have the people who protect them. So it didn't take it particularly well. Valence Roman.
He's got a point. He's got a fair point.
Valence Roman the next day put out this statement, this is absolute gold. Following yesterday's match as part of the 22nd day of the ProD2 Championship, the post-match press conference, Valence Roman, through its president Laurent Boguerot and its general manager Fabien Fortessin, would like to express its greatest consideration and respect for the institution that is SU Argent, its history, its leaders, its players of yesterday, and its track record. It also like to express its greatest consideration and respect for the refereeing body and the institutions of French rugby. Thus, if the remarks made by Fabien Fortessin during the post-match press conference, in a particularly tense context in view of the sporting stakes of the match and the scenario, may have offended, Valence Roman apologises and hereby congratulates Argent on its victory. It's so good.
One of the bigger U-turns. That's just so perfect. Like you could have, they've chat GPT'd the official statement there, have they? The next day, it's like chat
so
GPT. Good. One of our teams disrespected these people. Please, could you write an apologies official statement? And then there you go.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, that is translated. So, but I think we can be fairly certain that he's come out swinging and then been told, Fabien, we're going to need to backtrack on that. Oh, magnificent stuff. Yeah, where to? Well, final game of the weekend was Grenoble Béziers. And, well, Rob, do you want to tee it up?
Yeah, Grenoble are now 16 points clear of second placed Provence. Béziers actually now slipped down to fifth after that. They sent a very weak side because it seems like teams are kind of giving up. They're waving the white flag because Grenoble are that strong. And at the forefront of that is a player that has attracted a lot of attention in both the French media and the British media for obvious reasons. And we are delighted to say that we are hearing from him next.
Who is it?
Sam Davies. The Magician of the Mountains.
The Magician of the Mountains coming right up. We're delighted to be joined by former Ospreys, Dragons, Wales, and now tearing up trees at Grenoble fly half, Sam Davies. Sam, welcome to the Rosbiff Rugby podcast. How you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to be here and looking forward to the pod.
You're looking
Excellent.
very relaxed, I have to say.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is, you missed, because the timekeeping thing, obviously you missed the first part. But I said I've been training all day, so I had to get in the bedroom where the phone charger lead is, just to get it plugged in, because the phone was running low on juice, and obviously I got this call, so yeah, I'm relaxed. That's the best way to be, right, for a pod?
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. And we were just saying, so a few sort of French style St David's Day celebrations, but you're fresh off of another wicked win at home against Béziers on Friday. Pretty satisfied with how that went, I assume.
Yeah. We're satisfied with the first half, I think, is probably the best way to put it. I mean, we're well aware Béziers made a lot of changes to their team, so it was always going to be, a case of making sure we stuck to our game plan, didn't get carried away. Didn't kind of think, sorry, may look relaxed, but I got something stuck in my throat. All right, okay. And yeah, like I was saying, just in terms of the amount of changes Béziers made, we needed to make sure that we stuck by our game plan and played it like a proper game. And the first half was good, going in 31-0. But a red card after maybe 50 minutes kind of shook the game up. And then I think at one stage we were down to 13. So probably wasn't how we wanted to finish the game, but we'll take the positives from the first half.
And I mean, so Grenoble now sitting, 16 points clear at the top. And we've spoken to a few guests this season, and generally speaking, they said that the quality and the competitiveness of ProD2 is higher than I think it has been in the past. So could you have imagined it going quite so well thus far? Obviously not tempting fate, but it's been a pretty serious first 2/3.
I couldn't, to be honest. I mean, coming off the back of last season and seeing how competitive the league was then, and obviously losing quite a few players in the summer as well. You're not quite sure how the new signings are going to come in and do. And fortunately, they've been really good recruits for us. Still, I never kind of thought that we would, have hit the ground running like we did and be 16 points clear at this stage. And surely because of how competitive the league is. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to get some really good wins on the road and picked up bonus points at home in 8 of our 11 home games and won 11 of them. So, I think from an outsider, you obviously look at Grenoble as the favourites to go up. But for me, it's just a case of getting into the top two, and then it becomes a real kind of almost 50-50, I mean, you can see how fickle the games are last year when we beat Provence in the semi, probably a slight underdogs, and then go into the finals probably favourites and lose that. So, I mean, we'll take nothing for granted, and we know we're nowhere near the finish line yet, but it is nice to obviously be a few points clear at this stage. But like I said, we can't take it for granted because we know how fickle this competition and how competitive it is.
That's just taking you back to that last season. If we might as well start there while you're on it. What's the kind of mindset going into those games? Because I guess you guys last year were kind of the form team, but had come up from quite a long way back.
Yeah.
And obviously, well, as things are going, it's probably going to be the opposite way around. But how is it going into that final, knowing that you've kind of got a shootout, but also you've got a kind of backup option? And then I guess following on from that, how is it going into the second week when you've just lost?
Yeah.
And you're supposedly playing an even better team in the next week?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because obviously it was a first for me as well. I mean, I've never had the magnitude of, I'd say, these games, on my plate, really. I mean, coming from the Ospreys where we made maybe, we made a semi-final, a quarter-final here and there. But even then, it was never to get promoted. So even if we'd have won the competition, you're not getting promoted or there's no chance of relegation. So it was completely new for me, and it's something I really enjoyed. However, I mean, it makes the pressure enormous. And the mindset, I mean, obviously the mind can do funny things. For me, it was kind of stayed relaxed for the first game, for the final, because I mean, with the circumstances last year, people weren't expecting us to kind of get anywhere near it, really, with about 15 games to go. I mean, we were miles off with the deductions we'd had and the unrest that was kind of laying around the club with some of the things that had gone on. So then when we got to fourth place, I think it was fourth where we finished, for me, it was like, well, it's just like a free shot this year. We haven't really, like the new president's come in, he hasn't prepared to go up. Like there's no, expectation on us. So like go to Provence and win, but you expend a lot of energy in that semi-final doing that. And I almost think that we'd kind of blown out by the time we got to the final. And I think that was kind of evident in our performance where we dropped the ball 13 times and Van only dropped it twice. There's the amount I could mention about that game. We dropped the ball over the line, get held up over the line. But it is what it is. Then going back to your question on how does it for the following week, everyone's down. Everyone's kind of, in the dumps, depressed almost for the next 2 or 3 days. Because, the ultimate goal is over here. And I think the French take it very kind of seriously as they want to be the champions of France, in ProD2. So, the best way to go up is to obviously do it that way. And, having had conversations after with some of the Frenchies and it was just so difficult after, we weren't the champions to go into the following week. But I was almost like, well, let's bed that game now and let's get on with, what's to come. And we should have beaten Montpellier again when you look back at the game, but we weren't obviously clinical enough and our ill discipline cost us. Having said that, I think, as difficult as it was, I think it may have been a blessing in disguise in terms of allowing us to recruit the players we have and giving us a year to kind of gel together and to prepare to go to the top 14, which is obviously what we've spoken about this year, in a way in which, everyone's ready. Whereas I think if we went up to the top 14 for this season, we may have been caught a little bit, cold-blooded, a little bit off guard. We would have been signing players probably left, right, and centre, as Van did, and they're not doing bad, are they? But it's such a difficult league. Whereas I feel we've got a very stable squad this year, and I'm confident that we're going to give it a good go to get promoted. That's obviously the first thing, and then further down the line, we'd love to obviously stay in the top 14, but acknowledging how hard that is as well is, it's a reality. But like I said, the squad we've got, if we can keep the players fit, got quite a lot of injuries right now, but we're still getting the job done. So yeah, mentally it's very different from anything I've experienced before, but the magnitude of the games just brings this feeling in your stomach, that you don't get unless maybe you play international rugby. Like it was the last time I got that. So it's really incredible.
It's interesting you say that. You say you guys were kind of a bit defeated after that final, the ProD2 final, because until relatively recently, it was the top 14 side had never won that access match. It was kind of, I think it's only been Montpellier last year and I think one Perpignan the year before that. So it's kind of always it feels like it's weird that both teams are then down in the dumps because Montpellier were just in a complete spiral like last year. How was it kind of coming? Because obviously they had some serious names, like they still do, and whoever ends up in that access match game this year is probably going to have some serious names. What's it like, kind of like eyeing up the opposition and knowing that this could be a completely different beast, or like these guys are going to be a different caliber? Yeah,
I think the best way to describe it would be how the first kind of maybe 15 minutes went of the access game, when we were just all a little bit kind of taken back. We go 14-0 down straight away, and then it's almost like, oh well, game over, But then once you realise that, I don't think there's a massive gap in maybe the levels. There probably is in some aspects of it. Some aspects of the game, maybe a line out, scrum, etc. But when you chuck, a ProD2 team at home in front of 20,000 people against the likes of Montpellier, who came down with World Cup winners and all sorts of internationals, we really shook them up. Toward the end of the first half, we shook them up. We got ahead at half time. We came out and we missed an opportunity to score about 5 minutes into the second half. And I truly believe if we'd have scored there, I think they would have just kind of capitulated. And I've played against obviously some of the big names in the URC and at the international level, But in France, it's a little bit different when home advantage comes into play because it makes such a difference. And I do believe that this year, regardless of who obviously goes up and hopefully it'll be Grenoble, I do think the two teams will. I don't know who's going to be against. So it's a big statement to make, but I do think that the two teams from ProD2 will go up this year.
Amazing. And who have you mentioned, and we sort of, I think, forgotten a little bit because of how good a season it's been, but did lose some big names last year. Some young guys as well, Massa and Montaigne and guys like that. Who of the folks who have come in have really made the sort of impact and hit the ground running?
Yeah, so Hanru Sugal, so a South African number 8. He's an incredible player, powerful. I mean, just doesn't set a foot wrong, gets us over the gain line. So that's one of our non-GIF players. Another one was Johannes Jonker. So we signed him from Bath, tight head. He's picked up an injury at the start of the year, but now he's back fit. And I mean, his scrummaging is great. He's great around the park. He's got that physicality. And then backs, there's going to be, he likes Gershwin Mouton. So Namibian. Scored 2 tries on the weekend. He's been a real revelation for us. Explosive player. Again, just like oozes class, like doesn't really set a foot wrong, knows the game inside out, like just does. He can play 13, he can play winger, he can play 15. I think his best position is probably winger, just because of how elusive he is out on them channels. But again, being a great recruit for us. And then probably going to a bit more of like the boys who are still here is like, obviously, we'd say we probably had a young squad last year. Now they're a year older. I think they've matured quite a bit with what they've been through. Because I know Rob was just saying about it's been 2 years where there's been 2 losses. Well, they both happen to be against Grenoble, the 2 access games. So, the players have experienced a lot. They've been through a lot. And I think they couldn't be more hungry to get it over the line this time round. I mean, it's just, for it to happen once is painful. And then I only had it once. It was the second time for them. And I can feel how painful it is after one time, and I don't want to go through that again. So the hunger that is obviously being shown this year is probably part and parcel of some of the kind of things that have gone on in the past with the access games. But then I also think that the players have learned from that, and they're a lot more experienced, which is beneficial for Grenoble as a club.
Feels like to me like you guys have got just a big squad. I don't know how it compares or how you feel like compared to last year. It feels like you've just got a massive squad, and like a load of the guys are just really interchangeable. Like, you've got a few key players that are kind of stand out, but a lot of positions, it's kind of different names each week, and the performance doesn't seem to drop. It's kind of an amazing cohesion that you guys seem to have. Is there kind of, have you noticed a kind of general increase across the squad from everyone? I think definitely so. I think we've definitely got more non-GIFs this year than we did last year. But I think the most healthy thing we've got in our relationships, the most healthy thing we've got in our squad right now is the fact that, like you said, when one player drops out or is kind of rested, the guy that's stepping in is generally just doing a good or better job. So, I mean, the competitiveness that we've got amongst ourselves, and like everyone's wanting to get back from injuries to get playing because everyone can see how well the team is doing. So, you've got this winning environment going around that, if you step into a game, you have to deliver or you're going to be pulled straight out. And I think that's what makes teams successful. Unfortunately, we've got that this year. And we've been, that's not to say we haven't been struck with like injury crises. And like, we've got one this weekend, actually, in the hooker position, because 2 of our hookers are injured, but they're not injured for 3 months. So we can't bring a medical joker in. And then our other hooker who got a yellow card, it was his 3rd yellow card in 3 games. So he's banned. So we haven't got a hooker to play this weekend, which is crazy, really. So one of our loose heads is going to be probably starting. And he's just picked up throwing in the ball into the line over the last couple of weeks. And then our tight head, one of our tight heads, he's covering. And, well, I mean, I've seen people throwing the ball better than him. It's like there's obviously going to be some complications for us. Oh, wow.
But, again, I don't think we're not down and out. Like, as a team, we know exactly what we got to do still. And we've still got a strong enough squad, even if there are changes this week. to get the job done, because I think teams are fearing us a bit more now, and I think you can see that in some of the team selections that are getting sent down to the Stade des Alpes. It's almost like they're sending down the bomb squads because they just know it's just not an unwinnable game, which is great, but also can be quite frustrating as well, because you do want to be playing against the best teams.
Yeah, Bezier were pretty weak on Friday, weren't they? There was just no names in that one.
Yeah.
Sam, we can't get you on without. There's been plenty of sort of chat, I'd say, for a while, given your performances at Grenoble, and a few bits going on, obviously, at home with Wales. Matt Sherratt, I believe, would have been your backs coach at Ospreys. Is that correct?
Yeah. He coached me I was with Jockey for a year. Yeah.
Okay.
For a year.
You've got to ask, has he been on the blower at all?
Well, so I had a really good relationship with Jockey, actually, and I really liked his style of coaching. He came in, he was like a breath of fresh air to the environment, and he was very clear with his game plan, which I really liked, and his attacking philosophy was also great, as I think we could probably see from Cardiff's performances and Wales's last one. I texted him after he got the job, and he just kind of thanked me and just said, it wasn't for a long time. It was he's just doing a short-term kind of role, which I think is the wise thing to do for where he's at in his coaching career. He's risen pretty quickly, so I think he's a very, very knowledgeable man, in my opinion, and I think he doesn't want to take one of the biggest jobs you could say one of the biggest jobs in world rugby, really, especially with where everything's are there now, and then get taken off the pedestal too early, because I think he's doing a great job at Cardiff, and he obviously signed a long-term deal there. No, he hasn't been on the blower asking me to go back. I think he took his Cardiff boys, the Jared and Anscombe, back, didn't he? Which they did a great job coming back into difficult circumstances. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see who does come in full time and what their beliefs are, and what their thoughts are moving forward with everything relating to Welsh rugby and cap rules, and just everything, philosophies. It's going to be really interesting, because it's not an easy job, but it is a job that's full of potential, in my opinion. Wales is a proud rugby nation, and they shouldn't be in the position they're in now, which is quite it's quite disheartening. And all the French boys are asking me, well, why aren't you in the Wales squad? Like, you should be there. I'm like, I'm saying I'm not allowed, but I'm not. I think I am allowed, really, because I think the rule around whether you get an offer from a region or a fair one is related to the cap rule. So there's an argument there to say, well, I never got a fair offer, and this contract I just signed, there was. A couple of Welsh clubs were trying to talk to me, but I didn't even entertain it, so there was no offers. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see moving forward. But my goal is just to get into the top league with this Grenoble team, and I've really enjoyed making the step over into France, because it's just been completely different, but completely kind of suited to me.
Do you feel like there's been more attention on you personally, in terms of I don't know, I see you're all over our social media because we're our algorithm is ProD2, but do you feel like you're getting more attention than you almost did in your last few years at the Dragons?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's obviously, I found it quite funny kind of last year, because it was all good press, but it's well, I'm not doing million things differently to what I was doing at the Dragons. I'm just working in in terms of mentality. So I'm surrounded by a winning team. That's enabling me to kind of maybe showcase my performance a little bit better. But yeah, it's quite interesting to come across the pond and then see that even back in Wales, I'm almost getting more press, and to see people getting pissed off. It was quite funny. Why are we talking about him again? And he's left. Blah 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 blah. He's playing in the second division, and the best thing about that comp is if you drop some of the Welsh regions, I think, into this comp, you'd be surprised at how difficult they would find it. Because it's not an easy competition. But anyway, yeah, it is interesting to see sometimes when the press goes a bit crazier when you actually leave the country. But I suppose that it is what it is.
And what was the thinking then when you with that? How did your move to Grenoble come about? Was it you went searching? A lot of people have got some really wacky stories. They're amazing, like what people come up with, how they signed for French clubs.
Yeah, I suppose it would be an interesting one because I think my first contact with a French team was through Grenoble, through kicking coach at the Dragons, who was doing a bit of work. He now works with Argentina, I think, full time, kicking consultant. Alan Kingsley, who's a great guy. And he kind of was doing some kicking, like he was doing a couple of clubs, but he happened to be doing Biarritz. And then the Biarritz coach went to Grenoble and then was asking about me and my salary expectations, etc. So I think that was where the link was made. So like through my kicking coach at the Dragons, who, like I said, great guy. But yeah, I mean, obviously the markets were an absolute nightmare. And there was an opportunity to go to Cardiff. And I was like, well, do I stay in Wales, stay put in the same house, or do I get out of my comfort zone, explore something new, a new culture, new league? And I was like, I just got to try it, and I'm so glad I did, and I think looking back, if I was in the Cardiff squad, I think in my head, or maybe I would have gone to the Wales squad, which was a possibility if I was playing back there. But still, the experiences I've experienced so far, I wouldn't take them away, for the world. And hopefully what's to come is good, and I'll do everything in my power to make that the case. But yeah, I'm incredibly happy that I did sign to France and sign where I signed in Grenoble, and that's why I've extended for 3 years.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's been from afar. It's been awesome to watch. So long may it continue, and long may those 3 years hopefully be in the top 14. Sam, before we go, we always ask our guests, come on, recommendations for their town, their grounds. So we have been to Grenoble for a night, but
I'm wearing my Grenoble jumper.
Nice representing.
If we were to come back out, where would you point us in the direction? Okay. And is there anywhere we can find your gin behind the bar as well?
Yeah, so those are the bars I was just going to push you towards, actually. So, I mean, there's obviously, as you spend more time here, you find out the places. I mean, Grenoble's quite good for nightlife, and I suppose France is as a whole. A couple of places where we would go after a good win, more so last year. I think my wife, my wife is pregnant, so I haven't been. Yeah, thank you. So Le 365, so Le 365 is a good bar which serves my gin. So obviously, any bar that serves my gin's a good bar. Champollion, Le Champollion, which is another great bar in the Grenoble area. And then, I mean, if you want to go a bit further outside, sorry, if you pronounce it right. And then ski resort, Les Des Setlo, which does all my cocktails. The gin is in all of the cocktails, so makes for a great cocktail. But if you're going to go central, Le Champollion and Le 365.
I think I remember seeing that.
Certainly bear it in mind. Sam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We're about to hit our deadline. Could have spoken for hours, but best of luck for the rest of the year. We'll be keeping an eye out on how Grenoble get on. And thanks again. Thanks for being on the pod.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time, and I'll catch up with you guys soon.
Cheers, mate. Take it easy.
Life is made up of many gorgeous moments. Cherish them all, big and small, with Blue Nile. Whether it's for yourself or a loved one, Blue Nile's unrivaled selection of expertly crafted fine jewelry and statement pieces help make all your moments sparkle. Blue Nile's experts are on hand to guide you, and their diamond guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Celebrate a life well lived in the most radiant way and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. Auto Trader.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Thank you, Sam Davis. What a lovely guy.
Really lovely guy. Magician with his boot and a magician with his words as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And a magician getting his gin behind the bar of multiple institutions.
Yeah, we got to go back to Grenoble, haven't we?
100%.
It was a lovely place. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, fantastic. And we did line up, didn't we? The possible, it was Valence, it's Grenoble, Valence, and then a bit of skiing, I think. But maybe one for next year. But I feel like, talking about getting his stuff behind the bar, feels possibly fast becoming one of those guys with just like the keys to the city. Yeah. We spoke to Ben Botka, didn't we, at Angoulême? I'd imagine if he had his own range of something, what are they like drinking in New Zealand, that he'd be able to get it behind the bar pretty easily. Right, we've waited till now to talk about the top 14.
Do you want to look ahead to next week? Because we do actually have ProD2 games next week. And I'd say just generally on ProD2, like, I noticed last week that we were just about splitting into two because of Dax kind of losing quite a few games and Colomiers and Saxby doing pretty well. I would say we are now in a 2-tier league where you've got your top 7 of Grenoble, Provence, Brive, Montauban, Béziers, Soy-Angoulême, Colomiers, who, there's 5 points between Brive in 3rd and Colomiers in 7th. There is then a 9-point gap down to Nevers, who beat Dax away at Dax. Dax were in that, Dax were like 4th, basically in January. They have, in their last 6 games, they've got 5 defeats and a draw, which is obviously not fantastic. And that means that we have this, Nevers, Mont-de-Marsan have kind of dragged themselves out of that early season funk, and they're now just a kind of classic ProD2 up and down, win some, lose some, the odd great performance at home, the odd shocking performance at home, the odd shocking performance away. And it's tight. I mean, the Nevers in 8th are 7 points. So they're nearer 15th than they are the one position above them, which is quite extraordinary and shows you how tight that access match game is, because it's not going to be a relegation, because Valence are 23 points ahead of Nice. So Nice are gone, basically. There's only 8 games left, and they're, 23 points. No, help my maths. 6 wins.
Yeah.
Gets gained 6 more wins than Valence, which is just not going to happen. But that's a real scrap for that last place. And also, it's going to be a real scrap with Soy-Angoulême and Colomiers locked on 57 points each. Béziers 2 ahead on 59. That 6th place, someone is going to have the worst season in the world where they finish 7th by an absolute mile ahead of 8th.
Yeah.
And not have anything to show for it.
Yeah, it's as you say, starting to, or has started to part, hasn't it? Where are your eyes drawn this weekend?
Some absolutely massive games again. Valence Romance seems to have had a game near the bottom like every week. I don't know, maybe I know they're near the bottom every week, but everyone else, they just seem to, whichever team on rotation kind of joins them in the bottom 3 or 4 seems to play them, because they are now next weekend at home to Aurillac, who I think are 1 place above them, aren't they? Nice have a game. We said they're not going to win 6 games, or that many of their remaining 8, but they are at home to Agen this week. So that does offer a glimmer of hope. Elsewhere, you've got a couple of big games at the top of Soy-Angoulême on the Thursday night hosting Grenoble, who are now the best away side in the league. So that's an interesting one. Soy-Angoulême's home form has still not been that fantastic. And then you've got Provence hosting Colomiers as the first game on Friday, which is another fascinating one. Anything that grabs your eye, Richard?
Not really, not beyond what you've just said. I think it's looking. Well, I guess I've naturally drawn slightly, isn't it, to that one on the Thursday night. Two 10s that we've both been on the podcast. So, we're slowly infiltrating the league. Got a bit of work to do, but it's. I think I can't look past what you've already said. Where my eye is drawn slightly, though, before we go on to top 14, is Nationale.
Yes.
Which we forget it here. Which we've been talking constantly at the sort of battle at the top, Rouen, Narbonne, Chambéry, who still occupy the top 3 spaces. But somewhat sneaking up is the battle at the bottom, which is looking pretty tasty, it must be said. So we've now got our boys from Lille, Marc and Baruel. They do sit in that Nationale access match spot, with Hier obviously no longer a thing. They're on 40 points, 2 only behind Bourgoin, who are only 3 behind Stade Longuenais. And then only 3 points ahead of that are Suresnes, with Bourg-en-Bresse and Tarbes on 51 and 50 points.
Big win for Suresnes at the weekend.
Yes.
Against Marc and Baruel.
Which just puts distance between those two.
Yeah.
But not, like genuinely tighter than I think we'd perhaps kind of given credit for. And going into this weekend, we've got Bourgoin playing Suresnes. We've got Bourg-en-Bresse playing Langon, Stade Longuenais, which is like a bit of a, I don't know, what do you call it? An 8-pointer, albeit neither of them are in the proper relegation shite just yet, but it's not going to take much. Yeah, and then we mentioned Bourgoin, Suresnes. So yeah, it's kind of hotting up and similar position to ProD2, the top 7. You've got this 2-league structure almost with Périgueux, our boys, level on points with Massy in 6 and 7.
They're on a hot streak.
They really are, yeah. They really are. Ever since
Massy have won their last 8 games.
Some going, that isn't it?
I don't know whether that includes any Hier games. I assume it does, but that is quite impressive. They were struggling at one point. They've really hauled themselves up.
Yeah, and they will host Narbonne at the weekend, so good kind of acid test, I guess, to see where they're at, because they
themselves have 9 wins in their last 10.
2 form sides.
And they got a really good win. They beat Bourgoin at home pretty convincingly, but that's lifted them above Rouen, isn't it? So they are now second behind Chambéry and have Chambéry in their sides.
Our house. All right, well, we're doing it slightly differently this week. We'll be back in just a moment to summarise the top 14 and then do some Petit-Fours. Alrighty, top 14. Probably you were sunning yourself. I was at gigs, but we did catch a little bit of it. And again, we're talking about leagues taking shape, and the middle of the top 14 is looking pretty compressed, to put it mildly. And one of the big results, arguably the standout result and most eye-catching of the weekend, was your boys Po. The away win hoodoo is well and truly off their back. Must be delighted, Robert.
I was delighted. I was absolutely delighted. I was kind of nervously checking my phone throughout Saturday. Yeah, first away win since the 17th of February 2024. So now over a year, or in the top 14 at least. They beat the Dragons, didn't they? But came at a good time. I think they had 3 games in a row that were teams below them. 2 of them were away in Paris, but certainly 3 targetable games. And they've got a few injured players back. They were building quite nicely anyway as players were coming back, and just a bit more cohesion. And I think it's just, they've really used this period to propel themselves clear of that drop. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not ruling them getting sucked back in, because I think I got Montpellier next, and then there are 2 games after that at Toulouse and Bordeaux. So yeah, I think it's very much just the run of fixtures they've had that have been pretty favourable, but they have done, to get 2 wins and 1 losing bonus point out of those 3 games is pretty good going and key. And I think that the timing of those games, getting Gaëtan and Atisogbe last week was pretty key. Gaëtan he just knows his way to the line, doesn't he?
Cliche klaxon, but he really is. Although he is, wasn't it? Although he is going to be out for, I think, 6 weeks, I read.
Is he?
With an injury, sustained in the game. So he's been released from the France squad, which obviously he's been, in that kind of 23 jersey quite a bit. So it's disappointing for him because he's playing fantastically. But hopefully nothing more serious than a few weeks off. Oh man, Joe Simmons MBE kicked about 120 points in this game as well.
I think it was 24 points, it's basically like, I think the try scoring was pretty similar in this game. Like, I think they were even, but to have Joe Simmons, Racing's discipline has been poor all year, and to have, I don't think we expected it to come to a head at this point of the season, but to have someone kicking the goals that consistently makes such a huge difference. And those penalties just kept extending the lead, and means that you build up that cushion and you've got a team chasing it, and Poe could actually kind of get into cruise control a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good work for them. Racing one step forward, the win at La Rochelle, about 4 back it seems, conceding 47 at home. They are very much in the mire, as are Van, expectedly. They had a bit of a tough afternoon at a rampant Toulouse. Bayonne, who have just kind of found themselves in a nice little buffer on 11 wins in 4th place, 5 points ahead of Cass after their win at Clermont. Cass lost to Montpellier, but did pick up a losing bonus point in Béziers.
First defeat of 2025.
Yeah, fallible. And they've got a bit of a tricky run of fixtures coming up, but then I think so's kind of everyone. Dovetailing them, though, are Lyon, who have had a really good few weeks. And, okay, it was at home, but they were missing particularly their superstar Georgian contingent. And although this game was 27-20, it doesn't tell the story of a first half where Lyon absolutely ran Toulon ragged.
They ran them ragged basically largely during the first half, but in a 10-minute period. Like they first 10-15 minutes pretty even, and then a bit of forward dominance. Toulon get the yellow card, and they scored the first 3 tries in that 10-minute period with Teddy Bobigny in the bin, it was definitely a return to the physicality and direct game that I guess we expected from Lyon kind of at times last year. It looked a lot more like that with a big pack. I thought the front row was really good. But yeah, they looked a lot more direct. And Toulon sent a good side, but for whatever reason, were just a little bit error-strewn. Couldn't quite get a footing in that game. And yeah, Lyon built the lead out, basically. Ganuku looks amazing. He looks quite chunky, but he's so good.
Yeah, proper unit. And then to round it off, looking again at the bottom end of the table, Perpignan lost at home to a really strong looking Bordeaux side. Probably to be expected, but they are struggling a little bit at the bottom. And there was
now 13th.
They are in that access match spot. And sitting just above them, or a couple of points above them, is Stade Francais, who beat La Rochelle I did see most of this, and it was not one for the purists. It was pretty awful. 2 teams, you could tell 2 teams who have struggled of late, interspersed with some patchy discipline as well. I think it finished 14-12. And actually, you could argue Stade Francais with 12 men did all right to hold on 22-17.
I turned on for a brief 5 minutes. As I was waiting while I was in Barcelona, and as I turned on, it was a red card each and 2 yellows for Stade Francais, and it was with like 75-minute mark. It's like, what on earth has happened here? This is carnage.
Yeah, not great. More Macalunacy, red card, croc roll on Bougarit, who was unscathed, albeit it's never a good look. There are scales to these things, and it wasn't the worst one. As neither was Will Skelton's. I think on Roman Ronan O'Gara, this guy, he described Briat's reaction, I think it was Roman Briat, as he thought they were at the Parc des Princes and it was Neymar. He was not impressed with what he thought was a slight embellishment, but there we go.
And the La Rochelle president walked off.
Shook hands with his Parisian counterparts and just walked off.
I couldn't quite work out what was going, because you posted that and I was like, what's happened here? It took me a while to realise that was 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's just extraordinary.
Proper statement exit, that. Very good. Good to see. All right, we're taking a break from the top 14 this weekend, so we'll leave it there. We will be back later in the week.
No games for a couple of weeks.
2 weeks off, yeah, on the Six Nations returns, and we'll have a little special later in the week ahead of that massive France game in Dublin. But for now, Rob, Petit-Fours, anything to close us off?
Well, top 14 related, the news that you could not miss at all last week. So I assume no one, maybe Kerry, if he hasn't been on social media, won't have seen this. But Mar Nonu, the return of one of the greats of the game, best inside centre of all time, in my view. Potentially, he's signed as a medical joker for Toulon. He's not, but he wasn't in the squad on Saturday. I was disappointed.
It's quite something, isn't it?
The age of 42.
Made his All Blacks debut in 2003.
Wow.
It's just, wild. Yeah, just wondering what he's going to get. Is he going to get picked in a proper Espoirs team? But it's going to be like Espoirs with Mar Nonu.
They're going to send the Shags.
And do you reckon he'll be like
the Cyril Byrol as the dad?
And he'll be, because he's the best player, he'll play like 10 in the first half and then maybe 8 in the second or something like that.
I just really hope we see a Nonu Fainganuku centre pairing, because that is a couple of big boys that you just don't want running at you, isn't it?
Incredible. He must have been keeping himself in some nick to be able to come back. It's pretty serious.
There was a nice video as well to announce it from Toulon with Mathieu Bastereau sweeping the changing room and greeting him and handing him a shirt. It was very nice. But yeah, that was my main news, which was inescapable last week.
Yeah, very good.
Have you aware of Big Flo and Ollie?
Don't know if I am. Enlighten me.
Well, Richard, they have 2.3 million Instagram followers, and they are DJs, I think, and they played at La Défense after the Po game. But to celebrate that yet another home defeat, I think they were there after the Van game. So Big Flo and Ollie, they might have a big Instagram following, but I don't think they're a particularly good omen for Racing 92.
I did see some footage on Carwyn Tuapolotti's socials showing it after the game, and it was very cool. Big setup. So the only little extras I've got were, apparently, we mentioned Stade Niçois. It looked like they're going back down to Nationale. Obviously, a big headline signing a few weeks back of Waisaya Naisalevu, but they might be adding a bit of Rosbiff grunt to that, supposedly in the form of Hayden Thompson-Stringer, who's been at Provence this year, having previously played for Brive, Po, and La Rochelle, I think he was at. So that's pretty cool. And then the final bit was actually I nicked from a friend of the podcast, Ilta Daffith. The France University squad has been named to play Ireland this week in Belfast. And plenty of representation in terms of the universities, notably Paul Sabatier Université Toulouse, as you would expect. But quite a few from Université Grenoble Alpes, including one Samuel Bielbiere.
Oh, wow.
LBB's brother. So, yeah, one to keep an eye on there.
Very nice. Well, I thought you were going to talk about Iltud Daffith going to the annual agricultural show in southern Paris, and where he encountered another famous brother, or another brother of a famous player. He encountered Antoine Dupont's brother, who was selling big all black pig ham. And while we're in Paris, did you see that a Hindu club of Argentina, very, very famous club, Gonzalo Quesada played for them, they were doing a tour of Paris clubs. So last week, in the space of 2 days, I assume they had like a full club tour. They played Massy, Suresnes, VGA, Nuadspat, and Paris University Club, all on Wednesday and Thursday last week, which is quite cool.
That's very cool.
Very historic club in Argentina.
Fantastic. And on that note, we will leave it there. You can follow us on all of the usual socials. We'll be back later in the week for a Six Nations special, ahead of that clash in Dublin. Thank you to Sam Davis. Thank you to Rob for bringing his amazing new shirt to the pod. And in the meantime, we will say au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.